Okay, so we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. You see only one screen, right?
Yeah.
Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vridavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusantathami Bhagavath Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Vindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrutatuhe Namaha Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So we are seeing the fourth chapter, which is titled Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. So you see how we are transitioning from really from our action-based life. You know, like we say always, we are more of a human doing than a human being. And in this, it is really important for us to understand how through action, we can actually progress further, evolve further. So with that, we are trying to understand in this chapter, how is it that we can perform our action and how in the action itself is really built in. When I say built in is, you know, in action, not in action, but in action, we have the opportunity to go further, to realize further. And so, you know, this jnana karma sannyasa is such a beautiful word there, because in action itself, you know, we try to understand how do we do this aspect of renunciation, that is giving up action. And that can happen only if we have the thinking power. We are able to use the knowledge. So in this chapter, this knowledge of how we give up action is given here. So any question on the, I know Geeta, you raised a question before this chapter about how the shlokas in chapter 3 are related. Certainly, let's look at those particular shlokas. You said shlokas 6, 7, 8, right? Karmendriyani sanyam ya aste. Is that Geeta? Yeah. Indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyacharasa uchyate. You hit on
7,
yeah.
8, 9.
7, 8, 9. Okay, but the thing starts from 6 itself, because in 6, you know, Arjuna's question was, why can't I run away And Krishna is reminding him, saying that, it is not something that you can just run away, but have the thoughts of, oh my God, I wish I was there, kind of thing. So that's what he talks about as mithyachara meaning a hypocrite. So from there, he starts with Yasvindriyani manasa niyam yara bhaterjuna karmendriya karma yogam asakta savishishyate. So he extols this aspect of actionlessness. But what does actionlessness mean is what is discussed in this chapter. Then the niyatam kuru karmatvam, which is what you're referring to as doing my duty, right? Karmatyam, karma jyayo hi akarmanaha, sharira yatra pichate na prasiddhyeda karmanaha. Very beautiful. The shloka actually ties to shloka number 22 of this particular chapter. We will come to that, which is, it's only by doing our duty. But then he mentioned sharira yatra pichase. So even our sustenance of the body is dependent upon doing a karma. That's what he's trying to show here. And then yajnarthat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartam karma kaunteya mukta sangas samachara. So do everything for the sake of yajna. So beautiful, Gita. I think you really, even now when I'm reading this, I can see the relation to what we are coming in chapter 4. The only difference between chapter 3 and chapter 4 is, in chapter 3, he is giving what we should do. Correct. And in chapter 4, he is giving the reasons behind why we should do what we should do, Okay. So that's the difference between the two. Again, the flow of from one chapter to another one is again beautifully brought out. It's like, when I'm a child, I give that example all the time about fire. If I'm putting, if my child, a 5-year-old, is going towards a fire and is trying to put his hand there, at that point, you can't be explaining to the child, you can't explain this is what it will happen. You just pull the child away from the fire, right? The hand up, away. So that's what in chapter 3 he's doing. In chapter 3, he's saying about, okay, follow your duty. See, when a body does this, all that is just, he's explaining that, or he's saying, just do it. And then in chapter 4, through the knowledge, he's explaining it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. No problem. Thank you for bringing that reflection question, because I really didn't have a reflection question today. So now we are going to, in this set of shlokas, all the way up to 23. And I purposely am stopping at 23 because for today, I'm stopping at shloka number 23. Because starting next week, I'm going to address that famous shloka of Brahmarpanam, which is shloka number 24. So today we will chant shlokas 11 to 20 before we go further. अथ चतुर्थोऽध्यायः श्री भगवान् उवाच ये यथा मां प्रपद्यन्ते तांस्तथैव भजाम्यहम् मम वर्त्मानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्याः पार्थ सर्वशः काङ्क्षन्तः कर्मणां सिद्धिं यजन्त इह देवताः क्षिप्रं हि मानुषे लोके सिद्धिर्भवति कर्मजा चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्य कर्तारम् न मां कर्माणि लिम्पन्ति न मे कर्मफले स्पृहा इति मां योऽभिजानाति कर्मभिर्न स बध्यते एवं ज्ञात्वा कृतं कर्म पूर्वैरपि मुमुक्षुभिः कुरु कर्मैव तस्मात् त्वं पूर्वैः पूर्वतरं कृतं Kim karma kimakarmeti kavayopyatra mohitaha tatte karma pravakshyami yajñatva mokshase ashubhat. Karmano hi api bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha akarmanascha bodhavyam gahana karmano gatihi. Karmanya karmayah pashyet akarmani cha karmayah sabuddhiman manushyeshu sayuktah kritsna karma krit yasya sarve samarambhaha kama sankalpa varjitaha jnanagni dagdha karmanam tamahu panditam buddhaha tyaktva karma phala sangam nitya tripto nirashrayaha karmanyabhipravrittopi naiva kinchit karoti saha. So we had finished up till here last time. And here, this was basically, we had started the idea of looking at somebody who actually practices all these values. So, many times for us, we think that we can evolve if we have somebody who we can look up to, So we choose different role models in our life based upon that. It starts with our mom or dad is the role model. And then from there on, we choose maybe as we go to school, we see one of our friends who's doing really well in school. And we think, he or she is going to be a role model. When we go to our work, sometimes our bosses, seems like a good role model to follow somewhere along the way. But then you see, it changes all the time. So what Bhagavad Gita is trying to make us realize is, as a human being, we have so much more we can do. Our potential is so much more. So why not push ourselves to the highest limit? So this is where the knowledge, they're giving us through this knowledge, how we can get to the aspect of where we think we are this human body, the mind, and through our intellect, how we think, and how we can actually go beyond this in not thinking that we are this body, mind, and intellect, that we are actually something else. We are that Atman. So in order to get to that level, first the knowledge is given. And through that knowledge, we try to understand how we detach ourselves from this body, from this mind, this intellect. And then there is this aspect of our vasanas, So how do I get to that aspect of our vasanas, which is really the grandfather, if you will, of action, right? The vasanas lead to desires, the desires leads to action. So how do I get to that state of even conquering my vasanas, and how I can live a life of contentment, no matter what happens? We gave that example of a thermostat. A thermostat is something which, no matter how the temperature changes, it shows that reading of that constant. Right now, maybe you keep it at 65 or 68 degrees in Michigan. So how do I maintain that state? So this is where each of these shlokas are taking us to. So basically, Krishna is glorifying a karma yogi. And in shloka number 18, right? So we saw about how karmani akarma yapashyet, which is the shlokas that Gita was also referring to, the one who sees actionlessness in the action, and one who sees action in the inaction, somebody who's in action, such a person is wise. Now, why is he saying that this person is wise? Well, this person is wise because that person is able to recognize the actionlessness Atma. That is, at the level of Brahman, there is no action. But at the level of a vyavahara, what we do, there seems to be action. So even in the level of vyavahara, such a person is able to see actionlessness, is able to see Brahman everywhere. So such a person is the person who is completely wise among all men. That is what he's saying. And such a person has essentially accomplished everything. So this is just to show you how we look at somebody who is the most evolved of people, the most evolved, a monk, one who is in the Himalayas, one who is actually doing nothing, and who's just nothing in the sense who is totally reveling in that self-knowledge. So what does this mean for us, right? Does this mean that you and I should also become a monk, give up all these activities, go up to the mountains? Or should I be a person who remains in this world, I'm engaged in all this activity, and still, continue to do it? And how am I different who is engaging in this activity? How am I different from this monk? So that's the aspect we are looking at. What is the real difference between a person who is, totally given up everything, who has wandered to the Himalayas, and a person who's engaged in activity? So this aspect of this enlightenment, we would call such a person who has gone to the Himalayas as a very enlightened person. Now, how is this different? So we look at this enlightenment from 3 levels. Okay. So we will look at this enlightenment at the level of Atma, because we said at the level of Atma, there is complete actionlessness, right? So there is level of Brahman, it is just absolute infinitude. It is at Satchitananda. So we look at that level, where at this level of Atma, I am nothing but that pure consciousness or awareness, which is pure Sat Chit Ananda, Sat existence, Sat, Chit, our consciousness, or Ananda, the level of absolute bliss, right? So at that level, there can be actually no possibility of action, because, we have described now Brahman. We have described Brahman as Sat, Chit, and Ananda. So where is the question really of any action? Do I see any hands, legs, etc. in Brahman? Do I see any change? It is an absolute infinitude. There is no change at all. There is no increase. There is no decrease. There is no difference in a shape from a round to a square. In fact, at the level of Atma, if you look at it, there are no boundaries. It is just a pure homogeneous self everywhere. So at this level, there can be really no change at all. So at the level of Atma, there is no action at all. There is no action is necessary also. For the level, for a person who's at that level of enlightenment, there is no change, no action needed, because there is no need for any change. Now let's look at the level of the mind. Now here too, there is really no change at all, because such a person is totally happy, totally satisfied at the level of the mind, because the person is happiness. Anything and everything we do is only to gain more happiness, more peace. But at the level of the mind, the person is totally happy. There is no change at all. So at that level too, there is no need at all to do anything. So we see this, at different levels. At the level of the mind, if you look at for each one of us, right, we look at how we can gain more happiness. we are looking at how, we can get a better job, or maybe, better physical health, better through relationships, through different objects or changing situations. All this, we look for happiness. But if I'm happiness myself, why do I need to do any change at all, right? And then at the level of the body, we find that, there is again nothing really needs to be done because the person is totally fulfilled. So the person does only an enlightened person will do things in the body, maybe just to take care of the body, like Sharira Yatra Pijate, that word in chapter 3. Just at the level of the body, the person does whatever is needed because, again, the person is so fulfilled. So all this we find that at 3 levels, a person, a fulfilled person, an enlightened person is totally complete, totally fulfilled. Whereas if we look at ourselves at these 3 levels, we are constantly involved at something or the other. At the level of my body, I feel I have to get some pleasure or the other. At the level of the mind, I'm looking at many different things. And so at all these levels, where is the difference between an realized person and where we are? We are constantly involved in some activity or the other. So this is why in 19, Sri Krishna reminds us that that person, enlightened person, is one who is yasya sarve samarambaha kama sankalpa varjitaha jnanagni dagda karmanam tamahu panditam buddhaha. So panditam, pandita, which is panda asya asti iti, that is the derivation. Such a person is totally reveling in self-knowledge. And such a person is, totally has nothing to undergo, has given up everything. Kama sankalpa varjita is devoid of desire, resolve. And we saw this too about, in comparison, we are always living in this past and future. We did this last time, but whereas an enlightened person is totally living in the present. We live completely, always worried about what will happen and, sometimes anxious. And we saw kama sankalpa varjitaha. For such a person, there is no more desires, no more sankalpa, meaning this aspect that I have to do something because I'm incomplete. Normal people do things out of incompleteness, whereas enlightened people do it out of fulfillment. So that is, and we saw sankalpa, there is such a person has no anxiety also. And such a person, they are so fulfilled that whatever actions they do is like this roasted seeds example, which is given. That is, their desires are like roasted seeds. They have, it is not going to lead to any more new actions. So jnana agni dagda karmanam. So that's, such a person is completely fulfilled. So this is what we saw up till there last time for shloka number 19. And then 20, we saw such a person is also tyaktva karma phala asangam. Such a person has given up all attachment to the results of action. And then such a person is also nitya nirashrayaha. We'll go through this nirashrayaha a little bit because it's a very important word here. And is always content nitya triptaha. Tripta is a common word in all our languages. Nitya, always. Nirashrayaha, ashrayaha, is dependent on nothing. Ashraya meaning a substratum. So nir ashraya, having no dependent on anything. Karmani, he or she continues to do actions, is always abhipravritta, is continuously engaged in action, even though such a person has nothing to do. So this is we saw that. So nitya tripta, because the person is totally satisfied, because he or she understands that the satisfaction is in me alone. So why am I even going outside? Why should I even worry anything about getting anything more? I am happiness. So that is the nitya triptaha. And this is where I wanted to throw open this question to all of us. Nir ashrayaha, that is dependent on nothing. So just a question to all of you. So what is it that I am dependent upon today for happiness, for anything? What do you think?
External factors.
External factors, exactly. So can you, let's name them, let's name on what are the things that we are dependent upon, those external factors.
Family, friends, acceptance. You do not want to be rejected.
Very nice. I see, Pramila, you're going into some deeper factors here also, not just family and friends and money. And, these are the constant things we think about, money, job, everything. So what else?
At the end of the day, I think we all want to be, patted on the back by everybody around us. That's what makes us feel good. So you don't want to have any rejection, and you do not want any criticism, none of that. So
Very good. So that is at a subtle level. Anything else? What about no COVID? No more Ukraine.
No war, no.
Yes. So anything else? For the weather to be always 75 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't have to depend upon my winter jacket all the time, So many things, right? I mean, if you look at this list, it is endless on how we are dependent upon things for us, dependent upon. So this is why I brought that picture of the monk, when a person has recognized that this world is not giving me any more satisfaction, a person who has analyzed through the world and has seen that, at this point in time, my job, yes, it's great. It's bringing me the money. And, these are sometimes some things I think we need to meditate upon, meditate in the sense, contemplate upon, not meditate in the absolute sense, but contemplate, what if I don't have money? What if I don't have my house? What if I don't have my close relatives? We are so always surrounded by people around us. That sometimes acts as a kind of, we don't even realize it, but it is preventing us from thinking this way, about being independent of things, right? So how do I get to that state of independence? Nirashrayaha. Ashraya means support, actually. Ashraya means support. Nir ashrayaha. Nir always means no support, right? Nir is that upasarga in Sanskrit. So nir ashrayaha. Any other thoughts on this? Because this is a very important aspect, that's why I wanted to focus on
Sunita ji,
Yeah.
can I ask you something?
Yes.
We are always afraid of our health, right? How
Yes.
do we detach ourselves from that? I mean, in few years down the road, or slowly, our body is getting weaker, giving up. So that's the one main worry, right, for everybody.
Absolutely. Very practical question, as all of us are getting into the next level, next stage of our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Health. If I can get to that level of detachment, if I have that knowledge that my body is only an instrument, I am actually not the body. That is the key. That is a key meditation out here, actually. I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the intellect. I am that consciousness. And that is one way of looking at it. That is, if I can detach myself. Now, that is, of course, at a very high level. Let us look at it at a different way also, which is, I have complete faith in Ishvara. He will take care of me no matter what. I will do what I need to do for my body, which is I will exercise regularly, I will sleep well, I will eat the right kind of food. These three things are within my control. The rest of it is not in my control. So I accept the power. I accept the power of Ishvara, who is there to take care of me. So when I give that thing to the Lord, then I am not dependent on that support. Also, I'm taking myself out. I'm not dependent upon my body. That is why the chapter 3 shloka, which Gita pointed out, is very beautiful. Sharira yatra pichate. The only for the sake of my body, I do things what I needed. The rest of it, I just allow God. So two ways. One is dependent upon Ishvara to take care of me. So I'm not dependent upon that ashraya. So yes, nir ashraya is even more powerful, which is I recognize that I am that absolute infinite, not this finite body.
Thank you, Sunita ji.
You're welcome. Any other thoughts on this?
Hello.
Yes.
It is true. The thought, the answer about that we shouldn't be we should do what needs to be done, but the final result as to how our health is going to be, it's not always in our hands. We eat right, we exercise, we make sure we are following the doctor's recommendations, and we are doing to the best of our abilities. But when we are just starting this journey of understanding, that there's some power beyond us. When we are just starting this journey, being able to detach ourselves from that fear of, we get a small bruise, or right now it's like you get a cough or a sneeze or a cold or a throat ache. You're wondering if you've gotten, you're running to take the test, and, you're agitating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It is at this stage, when we are just starting to understand Gita, it's a little difficult to detach ourselves from this body. That's it's really challenging.
No, that is true. That is because, again, going back to the statement that I made earlier, which is we are so surrounded all the time by, it has created a habit within us, okay? There is this really, really habit that we have created, that I am this body. It has taken so many lives and so much amount of time for us. We do have to sit for a certain amount of time and contemplate, am I this body? Just to analyze through in our mind, am I really this body? And when I just, even that statement of am I this body, when I start to think about it, in the beginning, what happens is my mind will run all over because the fact that I'm this body has taken so much root within myself, right? So, Suvarna, to your point is, I need to spend a little time to contemplate on, am I this body? We don't do that. We are all the time running with this body, thinking that I'm this body, you know? So that, I remember long time back, this 20-20-20 sadhana, which is 20 minutes of reading, 20 minutes, reading something like Bhagavad Gita or listening or, but analyzing. 20 minutes of then contemplation on what I've studied, and then 20 minutes of meditation, taking that whole, the 20-20-20, rule, reading, analyzing, and then meditating. If I can practice this every day, to that extent, my detachment from the body can happen. Otherwise, I'm constantly only thinking about how am I feeding something good for the body, how the five senses. Like in Viveka Chudamani, there's a beautiful shloka which says, I should bring that shloka next time. I don't remember the whole thing, but it is about how for different, different animals, there are only one sense organ that it falls prey to, like a fish or an elephant. They have different sense organs which they fall prey to. But as a human being, we have all the five sense organs which we fall prey to. And so we are totally surrounded by distractions, which prevents us at a body level to move forward.
Yes, thank you. It is. I guess that is what I was looking for. Reinforcement that we have to contemplate. We have to do the mananam. There has to be that our own effort needs to be put in. Mm-hmm. in just asking ourselves that, am I this body? That itself is going to solve a lot of problems. Right. Thank you.
So for such a person, the shloka says, na eva kinchit karoti saha. So such a person, there is, there is no attachment to the action. So we saw this last time so the shloka can be interpreted this way: when the fruit of action is renounced, the phala meaning the fruit of the action is renounced, such a person is always ever content. And this contentment leads to absolutely no dependence on any outside factor. And when such a person does something, even if a person does something, the final outcome is the person is not a doer. So we saw this last time on here. So, this is applicable for even a householder like us. When I'm working at work, for example, I just do my duty, nitya karma, again, referring to the chapter 3. When I do that, I'm content with what I've done. Then I'm not worried if my boss is going to say, good job or not a good job or whatever, because I'm clear that I have done my job. So that is what he's saying here. So now going to shloka number 21, you can see that, Arjuna probably is happy with what Lord Krishna is saying, and he really wants to know more. And so let's do the 21st shloka, which is a continuation of the theme of how a wise person acts in the world. Nirashiryata chittatma, nirashiryata chittatma, tyakta sarva parigraha, tyakta sarva parigraha, Shariram kevalam karma. Shariram kevalam karma. Kurvannapnoti kilbisham. Kurvannapnoti kilbisham. Nirashiryata chittatma. Tyakta sarva parigraha. Shariram kevalam karma. Kurvannapnoti kilbisham. So we saw the word, nirashrayaha. Here the word is nirashihi. Again, asha means desire, or here, expectation. So nirashihi, without any expectation. Yata chittatma. Yata chit and atma. So here, this atma is not to be, is not the absolute self, but here he's referring to body. So, like annamaya atma, pranamaya atma. So those, the atma, the word has to be interpreted correctly here. So yata chit is referring to the mind. So yata chittatma, so without expectation. Tyakta sarva parigraha. Tyakta means again giving up. Sarva, everything. Parigraha, all possessions. Shariram or sharira, referring to the body. Kevalam karma. So here the word kevalam, we'll spend a little time here. Shariram kevalam karma. Doing only the body actions. Kurvan na apnoti kilbisham. Such a person doesn't incur any sin. So when a person acts without any expectation and is controlled at the level of the body and the mind, and who has given up sense of possession. So you see this word here, it's not the person as if the person has, given up everything and has run away, but the person just gives this sense of attachment to the possession. Only that is given away. And when such a person does any kind of action at the level of the body, such a person is, does not incur any sin. Kilbisham, we'll come to this word also, how this word can be interpreted here. So this, you remember in the beginning, I was comparing a monk to a householder. So this is something which we can relate it to ourselves. How can we do this? So nirashihi, which is without any expectation, right? So such a person does things without any expectation that I will get something or not, So this is nirashihi. And such a person, we can look at in, again, to ourselves, which is, even if the world forgets us, for example, we can still not, we can be totally without any expectation. So this is something which, whether it is with our children, whether anything, there is always this expectation that what is in it for me or what will I get? So such a person, when a person acts without any expectation and with yata chittatma, where the person is completely, totally content, or where the mind and the body is totally under control, or subdued in the sense, where this again is, you're not living at the level of the body and the mind. So where the mind is in, you can say integrated, but the word for integration is typically yoga. But here, yata chittatma, where the person is completely, totally beyond the level of the body and the mind. So we can look at it again, different, you can come up with some different examples of, where even at the level, when I do some things, I have no expectation and, totally beyond the body and the mind. So such a person is tyakta sarva parigraha. So has given up any sense of possession. Today, again, we looked ourselves at how attached we are to our own possessions, right? Can I totally give all these up? What would happen if my house gets burnt or anything? Would I be totally, totally, detached? That's the aspect of it. We've heard these stories about Einstein, not Einstein, sorry, was it Newton or one of the scientists, he had kept all his work in the garage, and everything got burnt. And this person, I don't know if it's Newton, it's definitely not Einstein, but it's Newton or somebody who just looked at it and was, really smiled and said, so what, if everything got burnt, I can, he was just not affected by it at all. So that's the level to which this shloka is really taking us about how today we live a life which is so, where we are controlled by all these possessions, right? So tyakta sarva parigraha. But such a person, shariram kevalam karma, anything which is connected to the body, for example, at the level of the monk, if he or she is only begging food for the sake of the body, that is not considered as being attached to the body, because the body has to survive. The body is the only way through which one can really undergo liberation, right? So shariram kevalam karma, the person is, focuses on only those actions of the body which is needed to keep the body in good shape. For such a person, kurvan na apnoti kilbisham. So such a person, whatever the person does at the level, he or she does not lead to any further karmas. So for us, when we do things with or without a doership, then that leads to punya karma or papa karma. But for a person who is at the level of an evolved person, there is no sin at all. So kilbisham, meaning sin, no further karmas is accrued by such a person. So that is the shloka of, that's what the idea is, what he's trying to show as nirashihi yata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma purvan na apnoti kilbisham. So moving on to shloka number 22 now, we see that such a person is again is content in whatever he or she gets. So we'll try to see this. Yadrichhalabha santushtaha, yadrichhalabha santushtaha, dvandvatito vimatsaraha, dvandvatito vimatsaraha, samah siddhav asiddhau cha, samah siddhav asiddhau cha, kritvapi na nibadhyate, kritvapi na nibadhyate, yadrichhalabha santushtaha, dvandvatito vimatsaraha, samasiddhavasiddhau cha, kritvapi na nibadhyate. So again, one more level of evolvement which he's showing here, which is yadricha labha santushtaha. So content with what comes to such a person. Yadricha, that is content in labha, which is what you get. Santushta, content in whatever comes by its own yadricha, which is in its own accord. I think we use this even in Tamil too, right? Yadechya, we say that whatever comes to me. Okay. Dvandva atitaha. Atitaha meaning that which is free, which is to be able to transcend. So transcend atitaha. Dvandva. Dvandva meaning two. Okay. That is two. It can be positive, negative, so free from the pairs of opposites. And vimatsaraha. Vimatsaraha. Matsaraha meaning envy. V, which is an upasarga again, which is added to matsaraha, which is free from, the opposite almost, you might say. So vimatsaraha, free from envy. And then samaha. Samaha meaning balanced. Siddhau, in success. And asiddhau, opposite of success, which is failure. So sama siddhau, asiddhau cha, kritva api na nibhadyate. Kritva, performing actions. Even when you perform an action, such a person is not bound to it, bound to such an action. So you can see how the last line is almost similar in almost everything. So yadricha labha santushtaha, dvandva atitaha vimatsaraha, sama siddhau asiddhau cha, kritva api na nibhadyate. So even though, it's like we come across so many potential things that can go wrong in whatever we do, but such a person doesn't allow anything to affect his or her own santushtaha, happiness, because the person is happiness himself or herself. So whatever the person does or anything that comes, he just takes it as a prasada buddhi. So yadricha labha, favorable, unfavorable, success, failure, heat, cold, praise, criticism, all these things, that person, these are the opposites, right? So none of these things affects such a person. Again, this is at the level of a mind, our level of a mind, our mind is constantly looking only for this comparisons. But such a person's mind is above all this. And such a person's mind is also free from any kind of envy. Again, envy being one of the important things, right? Important from a point of view of the mind, where our mind is constantly looking to see how the other person is better than me. So here he's trying to show that, this person is totally free from envy and is also content in whatever comes of its own accord in any kind of opposites. So sama siddhau asiddhau cha kritva api na nibhadyate. When such a person is acting, such a person is not bound at all in anything they do. So finally, the last shloka in this description is Shri Krishna gives how now you look at your work itself as a yajna. In anything and everything we do, if I can look at it as a yajna, then that will help me to evolve as well. Gata sangasya muktasya, gata sangasya muktasya, jnanavastita chetasaha, jnanavastita chetasaha, yajnaya charata karma, yajnaya charata karma, samagram praviliyate, samagram praviliyate. So this verse brings a close to this description of a person who is, who sees that karmani ya pashyet akarmani karmani chayaha, that aspect of it, where this aspect of actionlessness is also seen, which is Gata Sangasya, one who is unattached. Muktasya, one who is liberated. Jnana Avastita Chetasaha. Jnana Avastita Chetasaha, that is one who is established in knowledge. Yajnaya, for yajna. Acharataha. Charati means, moving, right? Acharat, one who works. Acharataha, for yajna. And for such a person, he who acts only for the sake of sacrifice or for the sake of yajna, such a person, whatever he or she doesn't affect him at all, affect him or her. So 3 things he's mentioned. One who is free from any kind of bondage or material attachments. Sangha means attachment. Mukta is freed from Gata Sangasya. Jnana, one whose intellect is established in the divine knowledge. Such a person, and who also acts in this yajna spirit, such a person, and one who's established in knowledge, is for such a person is completely, the actions don't bind him or her at all. So that finishes basically the shlokas on the realized person. And I'm sure some of you might be able to relate this to the Sthita Prajna Lakshana in chapter 2. Very similar to those verses, but in there again, at that time, the theory of self-knowledge was explained, but here through, going a little more deeper in terms of renunciation of action, that is what was explained here. So next week, we will see the most important shloka, because here, we are talking about yajna, which is here yajnaya acharata karma, one who acts for the sake of yajna. That is, yajna meaning, in the literal word is sacrifice, but in chapter 3, we also saw the word yajna being mentioned in many different ways. So we will just review a little bit of what the word yajna means next week, and then we will see the shloka number 24, which is Brahmarpanam. Okay, that, and I'll stop here. And if you have any questions, we'll take it after that. I will stop the live streaming also. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhaved. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Stop the live streaming.